everybody. What's going on? This is John from Mile Marker Zero. What's happening, everyone? And I am here with Mark Focarile. We're here with Jaco Lindito and our very special guest, Jimmy Keegan. Thank you so much for coming, man.
Thanks for having me, or however I show my appreciation.
We really appreciate it. These times are very strange. Let me unmute everybody so we can actually have talk. Okay, good. We're all good. So thank you so much again for coming. And one of the things we were talking about to jump right in were some positive things that have actually come out of this time, whereas a lot of things have been really, really negative, obviously, with all the crazy stuff, including COVID. You were mentioning that you feel like there are at least some positives. So that might be a good place to sort of start our discussion today. Can you name a few for us?
Yeah, I like the community. I like that one of the things that we take for granted in the internet is the ability to communicate. It's sort of that, like what we're doing now. We've already become so complacent with the idea of you can click a button and see and talk to somebody or listen to something or whatever it is, watch a video of your favorite artist or movie, all those things that come with it. We're already numb to it. And I think when situations like this happen, when we have to lean on it, we go, oh, hey, this is a cool thing. We've got, the things that we need, in a pandemic situation. We still need to be entertained. We still need a break from whatever pressures are happening, because obviously, some people still have jobs, but some people don't.
Right.
Right. Gone. My work's gone. But we still have to exist, and we still have to have some kind of a, social gathering and a way to communicate with each other. And I think we've found all these new little technological things that allow these kind of things to happen, or to have streaming things happen where I can play something for everybody or watch somebody, playing. And that's a great thing. Now it's much easier, and now we see it as a much more normal thing. So when this starts to dissipate and we go back to normal, whatever the hell that will be, it will be with this idea that now we can do things. Everyone will have bought these little Focusrite devices, and and it's great. It's another way that artists can be seen and be heard, and that's always a great thing. And
it feels like. Oh, go ahead.
Information, just any information can be, whether it's artists or it's, things like the protests that are happening. We can hear about them. We can see them. We can partake in some, if we choose to partake in some fashion in a constructive way. And, it's all good at the end of, it's sad that there are people dying. That kind of goes without saying. It's like, of course, but, whenever there's diversity and we can come out of it, like this, then it's a good thing.
We found that when we've talked to a lot of, especially because we've been doing all musicians, obviously, on this podcast, that it's sort of a couple camps. One, people were blindsided and had never done any of this type of technological thing before, or very little. Maybe they'd put up a picture on Instagram every once in a while, but that's about it, right? And then there's some who've kind of been adopting this sort of thing in the last couple of years, and we're ready for the transition. I know for us, it was kind of just leap in and see what happens. And so, did you find yourself sort of on the first end, the former end?
No, I was already doing things like this. I wasn't doing it as much as I wanted to, but what I had coincidentally done is I got my studio, such as it is, into a functional state. And the plan with the studio was to set up cameras, to not only do recordings for, as a normal, recording artist, do people's records and whatnot, but also to do content, to do tutorials, to do maybe lessons or something like that, master classes. And I was going to set up, cameras in multiple angles and whatnot. And so this kind of pushed that forward. I don't have the camera set up because, I didn't have time or finances to really get to the second stage of the studio, but at least it's, I can record in here, I can do audio. I'm working on the second album of this whole period, starting tomorrow.
Oh, that's great. What was the first one you were working on? Can you
I
say?
was a band called Iceberg, out of Germany. I've done work for them before, and so when I moved back to I lived in Las Vegas for a while. When I moved back to Los Angeles, I didn't have a house or a location that I could track at my leisure. I had friends that I could go to and do things with, but that would cost me. So in this world of competition, when you're trying to not only get work, you also have to be financially competitive, and suddenly a big chunk of that competitive finance is going to someone else. So yeah, the sooner I could get a studio up and running, the better. And so this is up and running, and it sounds it's my little sound city, I call it. If you're familiar, I mean, I've probably seen the documentary on Sound City, or you're familiar with the studio in of itself. It's kind of legendary, but it's kind of a shithole. It was just a big cube room that should have sounded terrible. All flat, parallel walls and stuff like that. It should have been awful, and it was so good. It was just dreamy to track in that place. And they kind of got it to a point where it worked and functioned, and when they realized, God, this sounds really good, they stopped. So it wasn't the prettiest place to record. It's just, and how Fleetwood Mac and Nirvana and on. I mean, the list is unbelievable. That that's what I call it, because it's I'm still drywall and carpeting, to mute some things. My stuff still. My desk is hilarious. So I rented this house. My girlfriend and her son and I rent this house, and they wouldn't let me take this thing out. It's a desk, if you can see it. Whoever had it before fixed motorcycles. So it's this fixed thing in here that I can't take out. So I have to make it my studio desk, and it's got raw wood with splinters on it. So I'm still planning on trying to finish it out. I'm going to put something on top so I don't get my hands all messed up. But yeah, so I've got a sheet on there now just so I can. But hey, it's working.
What's your rig? Let's jump right in. What's your rig behind you? Looks like
it's Focusrite. I'm a Focusrite artist, but it's I'm using the Claret systems. I have a new one coming to balance this out. So for just recording, I'm using the Claret and running into Logic. I'm using all Audio-Technica microphones, Yamaha drums, Sabian cymbals, Aquarian drum heads.
Is that the kit you had when I saw you in LA? Before we started streaming, I was asking you about that rooftop gig. Did you have to bring your own?
That's this.
Yeah, it looked familiar. Yeah, that's killer.
The classic walnut. Oh, I love this thing. It just does anything. It's got a great sound, great tone, and I can tune it any way I want. And so for the streaming stuff, what I'll usually do is I'll run everything through the studio rig. I tracked my drums, did all the plugins and whatnot as if I was going to mix them for a record, and then created a concert. So that all goes out to 2 channels, and then that comes out to a stereo Focusrite, a little 2i4. And then when I stream, I have everything sounding as if it's record quality.
Right.
But it took a bit because I didn't have any help. No one to push play and record. And, check this out, try this. I had to just, I've been doing sessions, so I'd had everything, all the levels dialed in. But, it was a process. It took a minute to get it rolling, a couple of days to where I was happy with it. But now I have setting. Now I just turn up that concert, and I have, as long as the drums are tuned and mic'd the same way, then.
Awesome.
Do you find that when you record for another artist, you're doing a session, either a song or a whole album, do you find they want the sort of finished product in a stereo format, or are you kind of just giving them unprocessed channel by channel except for what you're hearing, or how does that work?
Yeah, I offer all of that. Most of the sessions I do, I give them raw files. And we'll have long conversations in terms of like, what do you want them to sound like? Is it going to be dry and thuddy? Is it going to be, the snare drum high and cats making their way around? We'll get the basic questions out, and we'll listen to the song together, and that way I have an idea. I'll listen to the demos, and a lot of times the demo kind of dictates where the sound is going to go, because that's what people are going to do. They're going to get the snare drum that they think sounds what they want, and I'll shoot for that. I'll tune to that range. I'll use a big kit or a small kit, big cymbals, smaller cymbals, whatever it may be, and then I send them raw files. Now, that being said, in the case of, for instance, Iceberg, what I usually do once I've done a track, I'll send them a stereo file mixed in with their demo, so they can say yes or no to the track, like, is everything right? Or maybe the bridge can be this, we can change this a little bit. In this case, I always mix it. I'll go through the process of as if I was going to mix it for a record. And that way they hear it in context. Even if that's not how they mix it, at least they hear it in some kind of a finished form. Because raw drums don't always sound like, what you imagine them on a big fancy. Phil Collins' drums did not sound like that. That's processing. That's going through the stereo bus at the end and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of compression happening there. And, if you have the advantage of Hugh Padgham working for you and all that stuff, but the raw drums don't. So it's like, make sure they understand that they're going to sound, they'll be able to mix them to sound properly. In this case, they liked it so much. Thank you very much to those guys. That I'm now mixing their album.
Oh, nice.
They, the finished versions that I gave them, like, what are these drums? Hold on, this is killer. So, I'm patting myself on the back. But so that's why I've been very happy with this little studio. In spite of its size, in spite of its rawness, it's actually, I've been putting out things that I've been very pleased with the sound of it. So.
Is that a hat you like to wear? Mixing records? Do you get to mix records?
I do, actually. Mm-hmm. I haven't done it on a professional basis all that much, but I've always done it for my own projects, and whenever possible, I'm involved in mixes. Rich Mauser mixed Powder Seeking Animals and mixed Spock's Beard, but I'm looking over his shoulder on whenever possible, at least getting things rolling. He's just genius, though. I don't have to do anything with him other than go, "You sound great, Rich. Sounds good. No, that's great. Yeah. Whatever you're doing, keep doing that. That's good."
He's a favorite of ours too.
And it's been it's incredible. I don't have to. In the past, I got to be careful what I say here. In the past, we've sent things out to other, even very well-known mixers, and we get something back and be like, "That's not even close to what we were looking for." But whenever we send something to Rich, it's like it's like, "Oh yeah, that's exactly right." Everything
or better, or you're going, "Wait, I didn't even know it could sound like that."
Yeah, he's got a gift, that guy, for sure.
Yeah, the first track we did together was the Brief Nocturnes record, and I had worked with Spocks doing vocals. I sang all over the X record because Nick had taken the gig with Cirque, but they weren't done. They still had vocals to do, and there were some things that they changed, so some of his parts needed to be changed. So what we did is either I did the additional parts that they hadn't recorded, or I went into the parts where they altered the vocal beyond like a half step, where the auto-tune was going to start showing up, and I just did an impression of his voice and doubled him.
Oh, cool.
So that way you're getting a full, richer tone, but you're still having the things that make his voice special. Mm-hmm. It's still part of the process. And, I just did it, which is funny because his tone is so rich. He's got such a full, powerful voice. And my voice is this little thing up here. And it's, I sing generally in, the top end of my range. And so copying his voice, especially in the low, that was pretty comical. But, Rich made it work, and most people don't even notice it. I mean, once I point it out to you, you probably go, "Oh, yeah, okay, now that I listen." And so right. We were successful, at least in that regard. And even Nick was like, "Oh, my God, I didn't even notice." I was like, "How'd you guys get that part? That's not what I sang." "Oh, well, shows you how much we actually need you. I play drums, too."
Just pull a little, pull a Phil Collins, and you're good to go. Well, actually, I have a quick sort of follow-up on that. I read online, because we know everything online is accurate. It says that you did a lot of voice acting when you were younger. Is that sort of something that would influence sort of what you just did with
well, Oddly enough, yeah, that's what it did do, because I got used to the idea of creating voices, and I've always kind of done it humorously anyway. I have a couple of friends that are genius with that. They do voice impressions to you wouldn't even notice the difference between the original artist, both singing and just, comically. So we get into jokes of doing characters and whatnot, even to this day, because I haven't really been doing voiceover work for the last 10 years or so. Every once in a while, somebody will call me and go, "Hey, you still doing this?" "Sure." And I'll do a Japanese anime thing, and I'll dub a voice or something like that. But yeah, it was great, because it allowed me to kind of get inside and really listen to how he sang and get his inflection. And the thing is, I wasn't really trying to be exactly like him, and since I want to sound like Nick, it was just get the intent of what he was doing. If he sang, nasally, I would go nasally with him. If he sang, bottom end of his voice and chest and everything like that. So, but again, his voice is always in there. It's just I'm shadowing everything he's doing, and it's only on these really key lines. So otherwise, I'm singing. It's just me, or I'm singing with him, like as a doubling part. I'm doing the high harmony, he's doing the low harmony, stuff like that.
So
that's really cool.
You did a lot of singing with Nick, and then obviously when you joined Spock's Spirit, you were drumming along with Nick. So, so doing double drums, how famously Genesis did that with Phil Collins and either Bill Bruford or Chester Thompson. Allman Brothers did that. So, when I got to see the Genesis reunion tour, I got to see how orchestrated they do that, and I've always wondered. I mentioned that we got a chance to play with you guys back in 2007, I think, in Hartford, and got to see you guys play together. When you approach double drums, it seems like that's a really hard, with just so much sound banging around. How orchestrated, and how do you approach that? Do you have to be really orchestrated? Do you have to be really careful, or?
Yeah, we approached it kind of 50-50. I played, the first band I was ever in had two drummers. It started with me. The guitar player and I started it when we were teenagers. And then a couple years into it, we started playing at Disneyland, and we met Stan Freeze, was our boss. And Stan Freeze, his son is Josh Freeze, as well as Jason, the younger son, who plays with Green Day, and he's another freak. So Josh was affiliated with Simmons Drums back in those days. That kind of dates when that happened. And I had the idea, because I was a Genesis fan, I loved all the Seconds Out record and stuff like that. I thought that was just crazy. We had come to know Josh because he had a little job as a teen. He was 13 years old, and he worked at Disney in the backstage area, and we'd see him every day, and then he'd come over the stage and sit in with us and play a Huey Lewis and the News song or something like that. But he was already ridiculously good. I mean, we were all teenagers at the time, so he wasn't unusual to us, except that he was just really, really talented. And I thought, let's have two drummers. Instead of him being in another band where I have to compete with him, let's get him next to me. And he played the Simmons stuff, and I played acoustic drums. So that was my first experience with dual drumming. When Nick and I approached Spocks, for the most part, it's either or. Either I was playing, the same as Genesis. It was really similar in that regard. Either, I played the majority of the set, and then he would go back on instrumental sections or on, there's always an instrumental song or something like that. Rio would write some crazy fusion-y thing. He would play all that stuff. And on the big, giant, epic songs, End of the Day or something like that, then he would come back and join at the end or in sections. Whenever that happened, the idea was, it's his gig. I'm here to help. So if I'm the drummer for the majority of the tune and he's coming in the middle to join in, then we treated it like lead guitar and rhythm guitar. There's a lead drummer, there's a rhythm drummer. There's some guy that's playing the bit, and there's another guy that's just emphasizing what's going on. And then in certain things, we would go, let's do this fill specifically. When it was his tune and I was adding to it, then it would revert to, I would become the rhythm guy, and I would lay out in the fills, or I would keep playing time, or I would know what he was going to do, and join in, emphasize it in some fashion. But it involved a lot of listening and a lot of fine-tuning over a period of time going, okay, this is yours. You take this. You're the main guy. I'm going to just, just make it sound bigger. Mm-hmm. And he was always really generous about it. He was usually like, no, you're the drummer. I'm just, he'd always come back and go, no. On this song, you're the guy. Let me just, fill in. But it's like, they came to see you. I'm that guy over there. It's like, these are your fans. As it got further along and I became more known as a part of the band live, then the dynamic would adjust to that. But it's fun. I miss it. It's the one of the things that I, was sad. And besides just, Nick going on and doing his own thing, it was sad to see him go. But that's a fun thing. I like playing with another drummer and, hearing the ebb and flow of time, because everyone has their own sense of time, and it's that, oh, you want to go forward here. Okay, well, I'll go with you. Or I want to pull this back. And yeah, I love doing that. I love the whole, and the power of it, hearing everything. And that's just it's a lot of fun. And with a band like that, I mean, the music is also very dramatic and powerful, and so it just made it a lot of fun. It reminded me of being a kid sitting and listening to Genesis records and going, oh, I want to do that.
Hearing
there I was.
Hearing the fills manually go back and forth because you guys are playing off each other. I love it. It's a huge sound, really powerful.
Did you start out as a drummer? You keep throwing back to your younger days. Might as well ask about it.
I took piano for 2 years when I was about 5 or 6. I went to a Catholic school, and Sister Dominica taught piano, and so I learned piano. I wouldn't say that I'm a piano player in the sense of, I can play really simple songs. I know enough on the keyboard to compose and, do simple little bits, stuff like that. But I would never. If somebody said, "Hey, I got a gig. We got to play keyboards on this one." It's like, no. Here, let me give you a phone number of Walter Eno or Rio or something like that.
So who showed you drums? When did the drums come into play?
About 8. My brother. I have 5 brothers and 2 sisters.
Nice.
My closest brother, Dennis, I'm his only little brother. Mm-hmm. So consequently, he would, toughen me up and whatnot, and, pick on me and all this sort of stuff. But the other thing is he would, his influence on me was always musical. And this was before I wasn't even thinking as a musician. It was just, check out this cool song. This is great. Mm-hmm. So growing up in a house with all these brothers and sisters around with music of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, plus my parents' influence, and my ears were just wide open to possibilities. And he came in one day. I had taken interest in guitar, but I didn't yet have a guitar. And he came in with Song Remains the Same, and he thought he was going to play Moby Dick and put on Whole Lot of Love by mistake. And I heard that whole breakdown section with the theremin and Bonham and John Paul Jones slamming together, and just went, that's it. I want to do that. Awesome. So it's funny. It wasn't Moby Dick that got me. You would think, I heard Moby Dick and I wanted to be a drummer. No, It was him playing along with John Paul Jones and just doing this funky, that inexplicable thing that John Bonham did. Same with John Paul Jones as well. That they don't look like they should be able to play that way. They look like they should be, rock guys and, Lynyrd Skynyrd kind of thing and everything. And he's just playing this very James Brown kind of, big drums, but I was a drummer. So I sat in with a band we went to a wedding for a family friend, and I had never even seen a drum set before, and I was watching the drummer to the side and imitating what he was doing. And he came over and said, "You look like you play drums." "Yes, I do." He says, "You should sit in with the band." I went, "Sure," and sat in and played 2 songs with the band, literally sitting down at the drum kit going, "Oh, that's what makes that noise. Oh, okay, wow. Cool." So it was something that, who knows what reason, but it made sense to me. And just nothing else in the world does.
Oh, man,
I suck at everything. I can't play bass or guitar for beans. I was just like, Rrr. But drums was just like, oh, you mean this?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of my favorite things about your playing. It's so funny you bring up that story, because you have that same kind of like hard pocket, hard groove. Like everything settles, feels real great.
Oh, thanks.
And yeah, that's funny that's the inspiration would be that kind of drummer for sure.
Yeah, the first ones were Bonham. I got heavily into the Pretenders.
They're great.
It's when you think about the time like that, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, that would have been 78, 79, 80, the first half of the 80s and everything. So you had Elvis Costello, you had Devo, you had the punk scene coming, and the Sex Pistols and the Ramones, and the Pretenders kind of straddled that weird.
Right.
They're not really a punk band. They actually write great melodies and good progressions. It's a parts-based band. It's not a lot of noodling.
Love it.
So those first two Pretenders records were really big for me.
Nice.
Of course, Zeppelin across the board. As soon as the Police hit, I was crazy about the Police. I'd already loved Genesis, but I wasn't a prog geek. I loved Genesis. I loved Yes songs. I loved that record, and didn't even find out about Bill Bruford until later. And then fell in love with that for all kinds of different reasons. But the first batch of drummers that I got coming out of the gate, Queen, they were all these really, you'd call them heavy-handed, even though they didn't really play that hard.
Right.
But that big drum sound, and oddly enough, I play all small drums, and I completely went down to I got to be able to hit these things. So.
Right.
And then it cycled out. I started getting into Terry Bozzio and Vinnie Colaiuta, and somewhere in it all, I started listening to Jeff Porcaro. I mean, Toto. There were a lot of bands that I just knew because I like that song. I didn't know who it was. I just liked that song, and I heard "Hold the Line" or something like that. And but Jeff became a big influence. First, like anyone else, as a drummer on the records that I liked, and then because of proximity, I live in Los Angeles. I'm very fortunate to grow up in this town. You live here, you live in New York, you live in Nashville. If you want to see great musicians, you go down the street.
Right.
There's a Baked Potato over there. There's another club down there, and there's this thing happening over here. And any given week, you could see Vinny on a Monday, Chad Wackerman on a Tuesday, Jeff's playing over there, Carlos Vega's down the street. Whoever's touring in town. So there's just, and I'm just talking drummers. I mean, it's not to mention the bass players and guitar players. And I tell a story. When I was about 18 or 19, I played with Stacy Q. You guys remember the pop singer? Mm-hmm. And Two of Hearts, Simmons drums.
Oh,
and everything.
yes.
There's bubblegum stuff, but I was playing with her. I only played a couple of gigs with her. But one of the gigs she did was the Byron Allen show. And I was affiliated with Byron Allen from my youth, doing a TV show that he was part of. So I wasn't playing it. I just went along just to see the show, and I was going to try and say hi to Byron. And also his band was like Luis Conte, and it was, all these killer musicians. So I went up and introduced myself to the band after the show finished filming. And Luis goes, "Hey, man, I'm playing at the Baked Potato night. You should come by. I'll get you in." Like, yeah. I had never really been to the Baked Potato, so I'm going to go make it my first gig. Come to find out, it's Luis, it's Steve Lukather, it's Greg Matheson, it's Jimmy Johnson, and Carlos Vega.
Oh.
And I just went with him over to the Baked Potato, so I'm super early, and I'm just hanging out. So I got to meet everybody and hang out with them. So I'm just, This is crazy. Well, it turns out, for some reason, there was confusion on the date of this gig. For the first 5 or 6 tunes, I was the only person there.
Wow.
Nobody in the Baked Potato. The Baked Potato is small.
Right.
So, it only fits like 70, 80 people.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in the middle, and there's Steve Lukather doing his shtick to me, and the guy the guy behind the bar, and that's it. And about, like I said, like 5 songs in, I look up and this guy comes in. He's got kind of, this is still the 80s. His hair's all kind of spiked up and everything, and kind of tall. And he walks in and he sits down and he plops himself next to me and goes, "Hey, I'm going to sit next to you so I don't look like an idiot." Cool, that's fine. And I finally get a look at him, and it's Steve Ferris. It's the guitar player for Mr. Mister.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, okay, fine. Well, how are you, man? Good to see you.
Yeah,
Crazy
wouldn't want
fan
to
of
do
your
that.
band.
Yeah.
So that carries on for another 2 or 3 songs, and we hear this noise coming in from the back, and it sounds like somebody who's had a little bit too much to drink, and they're yelling, and why are they yelling? And Lukather starts yelling back at him, and this whole thing goes on, banter between them, and finally he gets into the place, and he's yelling at the guys, "You all suck. Yeah, you ain't worth the shit," just being rude, and I'm like, who's this guy? Finally gets close enough, and he plops himself down next to me, and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to sit next to you so I don't look like an idiot." Steve and I look at each other like, what? Wait a minute. And it's Mike Landau.
Oh.
So I got Landau and Ferris and Lukather and this band, and that was the whole night.
Incredible.
So welcome to L.A. That's
story.
a night in L.A. So that's where I grew up.
Right.
So, the guys that became influences on me are the guys that were around town, and Jeff eventually became a big influence, both his playing and, kind of a mentor thing. He had a couple of us that he took kind of an interest in. Abe was his close guy. Kurt Biscara was another guy that he, was really fond of and made a point of making sure, you got to know who this guy is. He's the dude. He's going to be taking my job soon. And Abe was, of course, we met each other at like 18 years old, and he was already just one of the baddest cats around. And Jeff introducing us at a NAMM show. Abe, he was already super tall. Abe, this is Jimmy. Jimmy, this is Abe. You guys are like the same thing. You guys need to know each other. My work here is done, and walks away. We're like, hey, man, how are you?
Oh, that's so cool.
So I'm lucky to have grown up in this town.
That's great.
Amazing. Let me jump into the chat we got some questions and some comments.
7, naked and boxers. No,
Okay.
I have no idea.
That about does it for us here. No, so a couple comments. Joseph Callahan. Hey, Joe. Jeff was the pocket master.
Yes, he was.
Ken Gregory says, Jimmy was a child star playing drums for a kid tune on TV. I don't know. Kid tune. Kid show? Is that what it means?
Yeah, the first thing I ever did was a TV show called Real Kids. There was a show in the 80s called Real People.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I feel like,
Yeah, it was like a human interest show, or they'd had a panel of people, and they'd send them out, and they'd go, "Oh, this young guy, has the longest, dominoes thing ever," and then they do a heartfelt story of this kid overcame cancer, and then there was a comedic one, so it was always a, various things, a political thing or something like that, and they did a kids version of it, and that was the first thing that I did. I got a drum set right after my 10th birthday. Right before my 10th birthday. There was a open casting call in the newspaper that my dad saw. Said, "Be at this place at this day," and he asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said sure. So we packed up the drums. This was in February of the next year. By April, we were filming.
Oh, wow.
So I hadn't even been playing for a year yet, and we were doing a TV show. And the band, they didn't mean to have a band, but they had so many musician kids show up that they decided, let's make a little band. And the band was a piano player named Chris Dawson, who's also a jazz cat here in town, and a young brother and sister act named River and Rain Phoenix.
Oh, wow.
And they were already writing songs. And
Wow.
Right.
we were all of 9 and 10 years old, and
Wow, that's amazing.
tragic, yes, but he was crazy good already, and he was cute as a bug, and you just look and go, yeah, no, that's not fair. He was brooding and serious, and he was like 10, knew all kinds of stuff. I'm like, what are you talking about, man? My dad's a physicist, and I'm like looking at him going, he's like, I don't know, I've never heard of that. He was great.
There's one more question here. This is from Joe as well. How did Jimmy get the Spocks beard gig?
Well, again, being in this town, everyone's around. Nick and I are sort of unusual in that we both sing. So, we all do corporate gigs, cover gigs. That's to tie things over and just, stay afloat when you're not touring or doing sessions. And our names became familiar to each other just for that reason, because he's this. I need a sub on this gig. Oh, you got to call Nick. Oh, cool. Does he sing? Yeah, he's a killer singer. Oh, great. So I would call him we knew each other by phone for a couple of years before we even met face to face. And it all kind of came out of the cover band world because, you know, I would paint myself in a corner and that I'd do these gigs and I would take on all these songs as a singer. And then if I had to go on the road or I had to do something else, whatever like that, and I need a sub, I got to get somebody who sings. And there's only a handful of us in town that do that. So we became friends through that. I had heard of Spock's Beard via Modern Drummer and other things, so I knew that this band existed. Turns out Dave and I had met years before because he worked at a store that I used to buy things at all the time, but we didn't remember any of that. So when it came time for Nick to, you know, I started poking fun at him about, okay, well, you're going to sing. Are you going to be a sissy and, you know, go out in front and do a Phil Collins thing? Or are you going to sing behind the kit like a real man? And, well, he decided to go out in front of the kit. And he's not a sissy. And hit me up about, you know, would you be interested in doing this? Like I said, I didn't really grow up a super prog fan. I liked certain things. I liked a certain amount of Yes and a certain amount of Genesis. You know, everyone knew Tubular Bells because it was this crazy, you know, song that everyone knew. You know, I'm a fan of the movie and whatnot. And I knew some King Crimson and stuff like that. So when he said, you want to do this, I kind of went, nah, that's a different direction. Sure, why not? And then the first thing he sent me was Snow. And I was like, okay.
Like, what did I get myself into?
What exactly am I doing on this? So how much of this am I playing, you know?
Right.
Like, well, you're basically playing all of it. I'm going to play little bits and pieces. I'm like, oh, my God, okay. What's the rest of the stuff like? So, but, you know, let's go that way. You know, it was great just to make a left turn and try
awesome.
something new. And now it's all I do. Literally, the session I did prior to going on the road with Spock's Beard was a guy named Tevin Campbell.
Yeah.
Tevin Campbell was a young singer that came up as like a protege of Prince.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I did one of his records. And then right out of that, went on the road with Spock's Beard. So I'm used to playing. And now I'm playing. You know. Okay.
Yeah.
But it was fun. And you know, the guys are great. A lot of fun touring with them. So.
Let me ask one more question here. Prog Bob says, does Jimmy have a favorite album?
Is that your real name, Prog Bob?
My son, Prog Bob. Does Jimmy have a favorite album that he's played? Okay, that's a good question.
That I play on?
Yeah.
Well, sure. I think the first Spocks record I did, Brief Nocturnes, I'm particularly fond of. I'm very much a big fan of the two Pattern Seeking Animals records. In no particular order. I'm very happy with the way they came out because those records are a lot more. I mean, John wrote the songs, but at the same time, they were a lot more about a new creation. Whereas Spocks, it was like, okay, I got to kind of recognize that this band has a legacy, and I have to sort of stay in this sandbox to a certain degree. Even though I took it a lot, I played a lot differently than Nick did. At least in the sense of, I focused more on groove, whereas Nick could groove. I mean, he had his moments of it. I mean, it's always a grooving drummer, but it's like, he was more of the Bill Bruford, whereas I was the Alan White.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, there's records that I've done that I don't think anyone know. I was in a band called Transmission OK for about 5 or 6 years with a guitar player named Blue Saraceno. And we put an album out that was kind of a pop, power pop kind of thing, you know, Green Day type thing. And you can find a couple of those on YouTube, but that record is probably my personality in a nutshell. It's fun, it's aggressive, but it's still intricate. I play like crazy all over it, and then there's songs where I just play time. I'm trying to figure out a way to get it released again, just so it can just be out, available. It's like no one's going to make any money, but at least that way it's accessible, and because it was a really fun record and a really good record that it was released and then the record company folded.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we sold 1,000 copies. And so basically no one's ever heard of it, and unfortunately that meant it now gets shelved with them, and we couldn't touch it. So now we have.
What's funny, Jimmy, is I'm a blues fan, like, because this is really embarrassing, but I was a huge Poison fan.
Oh, so, yeah, right.
So I knew blues from being in that band for that one stint in time, and then I followed him later. So I actually have listened to Transmission. Okay, I mean, and I didn't know you were the drummer. Man, that's great.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
But I can't even think, because I ordered it because I worked at a record store when I was a kid, so I was able to get records that weren't going to be coming into the store. So I had my own copy. I can't even think of if I know where that is right now. But so great that you're the drummer on that. Now I wish I had it because I want to go back and check it out. That's crazy.
Well, when we finish, we'll get an email or something like that, and I'll send you a link.
Awesome.
And you can.
I have it.
I have it digitally that I can send it to people. But
well, blues is such an amazing guitar player. Like, he's really underrated.
Yeah, and now he's just doing like soundtrack stuff. He's doing TV stuff, things like that. But yeah, he's a ridiculous player.
He's amazing. Yeah.
And we just had it was a trio, and we had crazy fun doing gigs, and it was a way for me to kind of get out that whole punk rock thing that I had as a kid.
For sure.
At the same time, still be intricate from like the fusion and prog stuff that I started listening to, and then it was pop organization in terms of length of song and how the song was structured, and so it kind of touched on all the little things that I liked doing.
Right.
And it was just just blues wrote most of the songs. He and I wrote 2 of them, and I just loved the songs, and it was just fun to play them and crazy gigs. And
conversely, if you had joined Poison, that would have been a much better band than it is.
I'm not gonna say nothing. Ricky's a good guy. I'm not going to stay out of that.
I love me some Poison. I do love Poison. Not gonna lie.
Don't boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Gary Malabar's a great drummer. I mean,
Say no more.
Well, I've always been jealous of a band that can write a hook like that. That millions of people are down to sing at a it's
absolutely.
like, so like, say what you will about Poison, Kiss.
No, they did what they.
And it got me into music, so
yeah.
I always tip my hat. As an older musician now, I could listen back and be like, "Ooh, that was a questionable, tracking," but whatever.
But no, that's still, you're right. It's like the things that we listen to as we're growing up, the things that cue us and all that stuff. It's not always it depends on when we started listening, and I mean, I listened to some pretty knuckleheaded stuff as a kid as well. Or I listened to things purely for the drums, then you listen to the lyrics and go. Okay. It's not like Dale Bozio was some kind of, Barbra Streisand singer,
Right.
It was a Keach thing, she just did her thing, whatever like that. But Terry Bozzio was crazy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, when some buddies of mine and I talk about, I'm a big Missing Persons fan, he always goes, I'm like, yeah, but listen to the drums. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, the drums are pretty good. And all right.
Yeah.
So, But I mean, Genesis is kind of that way too. I mean, they've got some songs that are kind of, okay, all right. But, there's no denying Phil Collins as a drummer, and, all those guys as musicians. And, he was huge for me as a, crazy influence. And at the part where everyone usually thinks, oh, that's the worst part of his career, that's the part that I love him. Well, no, not the end. But when he went solo, I just went, this is like the best drumming I've heard in a long time. It made sense. It had pocket. Mm-hmm. It had a sound that was unique. He played drums, and you're like, oh, it's Phil Collins on this track. And there's a Tina Turner song that he plays on that you're like, it's Phil Collins playing drums.
Yeah. I love the drums.
And he just plays time.
Lover.
Yeah, exactly. So good.
I mean, say what you want about Phil Collins. I mean, I'm the huge Genesis fan of the band, but guy, one of the best melody writers ever. Even when some of the even in the later periods when there, wasn't, some of it was a little cheesy sometimes. It's just that those melodies were amazing. He's just a great singer, and I don't think I've ever heard him sing a bad note, like almost ever. He's always on.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing. And how do you fault someone for being too famous? I want that problem,
Right.
I want to have troubles because I've had. Well, no, I don't want these troubles. But how many failed marriages has he had? He's still crazy rich, and half his money goes to this person, and then half of this money goes to this person, and half of this money. But
that's how you know you've made it.
Right.
when you have 4 failed marriages and
you're like, I've done something right.
kids all over the planet, and
everybody wants your money. That's how you know.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, everyone wants my money now, and I still don't have any. So what does that mean?
Well, that's a good segue into Pattern Seeking Animals, and so you guys have 2 albums out. One came out this year, one I believe was last year. Is that right?
Yeah, and it had we had it our way, we'd have had them both in the same year. We were actually, for the most part, finished with this record in December.
Oh wow!
Oh,
And then certain little things came up that we decided, instead of this song, let's try this song. When the record company said, yeah, we're not going to do it just yet, we're like, okay, so we've got a little time. We decided to put one song on the back burner and brought out Soon But Not Today. It was the last song recorded. It's the last song on the album. But yeah, John just pounds this stuff out and it doesn't sound like he's rushed. I mean, this album actually has some more interesting things to it than the first one did. But he probably spent as much time on it as the first one, because as soon as we finished the first record, he started writing for the next one. I mean, we were mixing and he was already coming and going, hey, you got to check this out.
Oh, cool.
So where most bands would write, back in the 70s and 80s, they would write their next album when they were on the road. We didn't get a chance to go on the road, so he just started writing right away, and we were tracking within like 4 months of the release of the first album. We were already tracking the second album.
Man, that's fast.
That is fast.
So, yeah, and the last one we tracked in like January or February, and then, we had it mixed pretty good because Rich is doing everything. He's kind of, when you're going to mix the album as well and master it, you kind of mix it as you're going along. So we knew what we were going to do. So a lot of stuff was printed, so to speak. It's like we didn't just do raw files. Oh, we'll fix them later. We fixed it now. And so by the time it came to mixing, he was just kind of fine tuning, and then it was already done. So everything was, spit out. It was really, this band really, whether it's the actual musicians in the band or the people around it on the technical side, it really caters to their specialties, to the things that make them great. Rich Mauser and his, engineering and his ear, because he partakes very much on some of the musical choices and arrangements as well, because he's a great musician. So we all work very tightly around, and we bounce everything off each other in terms of like the sounds and whatnot. So as much as John is the producer and he's 90% responsible for everything, the rest of it is still, there's room for us to put, insert ourselves in it. And so, yeah, it came out really quickly and very easy. There's no conflicts of any kind. It's, what do you think of this? Yeah, it sounds great. Well, maybe we'll do 2 versions. Okay, what's the other one? Well, you got another idea? Oh, okay. Yeah, let's try this, and there's no if there's differences of opinion, it's welcome. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, let's try that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how you want a band to be. So
that's kind of a rare quality, isn't it? To get those guys together and like really sort of feel like that everybody's being heard, no one's ego is running amok, and yet the songs still come out amazing or even better than the singular vision. I mean, that's rare.
And when you also take into consideration, we've only all been in the same room together during the production of these 2 albums for photographs.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, I work with Dave and Ted all the time, so 3 of us are together pretty regularly. We have a corporate band that we work with in Northern California. I'll actually see them this weekend. But in terms of this band, we gathered to do photos for the previous album, and then we did photos for this album, and then did a bunch of background vocal things like Soon But Not Today. We did all those vocals at this meeting. It's the only song where we're actually all participating at the same time.
It's amazing. Wow.
But, again, what we were talking about in the beginning is technology is such to where we can, you can literally chime into the session and listen to what we're doing. Just here, we'll set up a camera and send a feed. And we didn't do that, but we can. In some cases, we'd finish a quick mix for the day and send it off to the guys and go, what do you think of that? Oh, that's cool. That's great. What do you think? Because sometimes it's like, I don't really want to say this is a final track until I have Dave going, yeah, okay, I get it. I know what I can do with this. And because, you still have to have that band interaction, and you have to have room to adapt, room to hear a better idea. So yeah, I mean, that's what's great about it, and I love it. We're having a lot of fun, and we can't wait to play. Oh God, we want to play live so badly. We were supposed to play last month, and and we had two guys that were going to go out with us who were great musicians and funny guys, and just really looking forward to it all. And we'll figure it out. Hopefully, this time next year we'll be doing a tour with somebody. And
yeah.
So one of my questions would be, we a lot of what we've talked about in previous podcasts is sort of aimed at, some of the musicians who don't really know what to do currently, forget what's happened the last few months, but things are changing technologically, like we were talking about. And some of the things have been like decisions you make, some of the like soft skill decisions that people are doing now versus before. So a couple things that come to mind. One is, if you had to pick something that's non-playing your drums or mixing or singing related, non-musical, but is very, very important to do career-wise, do you have something that pops to mind, especially for the modern musician?
I don't know if I fully understand what you're getting at. I mean, that's not music related?
Well, that's not like playing your instrument, say. Back in the day, all you had to do was be really great at your instrument, be available to tour, and meet the right people.
Oh, well, now you have to have IT skills. You have to know computer skills. And
okay.
I mean, even to the point of if you can learn coding, because you can if you've got a background in coding, you can make apps. And I mean, and that's kind of just this open platform of, for what? Well, I have a couple of friends that got in the app world and almost hardly play now because they focus everything on, and it's completely music related. It's all, it's about either, instruments or communication kind of things. So yeah, if you can learn coding or just, you got to know how to work a computer. If you don't know how to work a computer, you're a dead animal. You're weight. You're slowing everybody down because everything's computer based. And I even have a friend who, great friend who's a phenomenal singer, but he's like, I like when it comes to recording, I like everything to be manual. I want a mixing board and I want tape. And I'm like, even it's like it doesn't even have to be analog tape. He's like, I just want to know that it's like a solid medium. I don't want to work on a computer and stare at a screen. And I'm like, okay, so you don't want to work then. So I've been throwing him ideas like how to get around that. Well, Tascam has these these old sort of modern versions of of their old cassette tape mixers all in one. I've been showing him things like that. And then a few other companies that have, Zoom has something, I think, that's like a 12 channel. I'm like, this is as close as you're going to get. But this is all like for rehearsals. If you want to actually record and be in the game, to where I can send you a track and do some background vocals for me or whatever, you have to be, even if you want to use a control surface, you're still going to a computer. That's the medium.
Right.
And what you want and what you don't is it's like, doesn't matter.
Right.
I'm glad you feel that way, but it doesn't matter. And so to anyone out there that's dead set on being, recording on analog tape, good luck with that. If you have that kind of money to where you can, have that kind of thing. I mean, it's cool to have it in addition to, but Yeah, you got to know computers. Learn physics. Learn, the art of building this kind of stuff. Learn construction in the simplest sense. Understand the walls. I mean, even I didn't do what I would have liked to have done just because I didn't want to go into the budget because it's a rental.
Right.
If it was my house, oh my God, the walls would have been very different. I would have a ceiling. But things like that are, it's almost a necessity because now if you're doing content, you have to have a place to play. And doing it in your bedroom is cool, but, pimp out your garage, pimp out your bedroom, make it so it's actually treated and sounds good.
Right.
As opposed to, getting standing waves and weird things going on. Learn the basics on how to do that, even if it's just simply for deadening, so you don't get any reflections. If you don't understand that, then you're dead in the water.
Right.
And it's absolute now because regardless of any kind of pandemics or things that force us to stay home, you have to have content. You have to be able to put stuff out. You have to do it for the sake of being relevant, because you're not always going to be in a band and you're not always going to be on a tour and stuff like that. You have to be able to be productive you're doing a session? Okay, well, not everyone's going to pay you $2,000 to show up at Village and track an album. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're really great and you've got that kind of reputation once or twice a year. But, Josh, Abe, Matt Chamberlain, Kenny Aronoff are doing all those. So if you think you can get in on that thing, okay, cool. Because, I have friends that were proper seasoned session musicians that, when the studio world changed, they resorted back to tracking at home and
right.
You got to know that stuff. You have to know that stuff. Learn another instrument. If you're at home right now and you're dealing with COVID-19, learn to play guitar. Learn to play bass, or vice versa. Get a cheap drum kit and learn to play drums.
Yeah.
Everyone should play keyboards in some fashion. You should know chords, and that's everybody. Drums, singer, and more so the singer. God. What key is this song in? Oh, I don't know. It's not high enough. I want it higher. Yeah, exactly. About here. Yeah, that's funny.
That's amazing.
I love when I'm on a gig and the singer goes, well, hold on a second, picks up a guitar and goes, maybe here.
Right.
When you're working out the key of a song, writing a tune, they're like, we got the idea, but maybe if we put it in this key, okay. Or when you're, I got to sing that song. Okay, well, my voice isn't that high. Can you drop it a half step, or they know what that means.
Right.
Put it in B flat. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
So you mentioned something a little bit ago that I think is definitely relevant to this point too, which is you do, corporate work and things like that on top of everything else. So how do you negotiate the different facets, right? Because you have these important bands in your life like Pattern Seeking Animals and Spock's Beard and these things that have their own schedules, and there's going to be some touring and you have your own sessions, but you have to pick up some other money on the way. So but how do you sort of decide what to do at a particular time? Does it just fall in a schedule, or is it more I need the money here, or like how does that work?
It's first come, first serve. Whatever I'm doing, there are certain things that there's leeway because, like for instance, I have a corporate band with Ted and Dave. Well, if something Pattern Seeking Animal comes up, it kind of covers us all. But they're in the same business. We're all in the same scenario where a touring gig might come up, or a session, or another gig that pays, more money. As long as it's not tomorrow, as long as you're going to that person who booked you and saying, hey, look, I have this thing that's come up. Can we get a sub? If you can get the sub, then you can book the other date. But you don't just book the date and then go, you need to get a sub. If you're doing that, you're a jerk, and you're not going to do any of those gigs very long. Mm-hmm. But it's first come, first serve. It's I'm a drummer. I don't have to be in an original band. I have to be in a band that's playing music and performing a service and making people happy and making people dance.
That's right.
So whether it's a cover band in a club or it's a corporate band at a a Microsoft party, and or on a tour, or you're in a session with a record company, or you're on a session at your house for a group in Germany that managed to put together enough money. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's all the same mentality. It's all important and it's all necessary. And if your ego gets in the way and says, I don't want to be a cover musician, I hope you've got a job. I hope your parents are rich. I hope you have a girlfriend, wife, husband, whatever the case may be, that's making some money, because you're not gonna. Because you're competing. I mean, it's this reality. I live in LA. I've been in Modern Drummer. I do sessions for Grammy-winning albums, and I'm not the first call. Where do you fit in that scheme? Are you working more than me? Because if you're not working more than me, you have to be thinking about family, and you have to be thinking about the reality of what you're doing. Yes, I want to be a musician completely 100%, but I also have a family, and I have just my responsibility to myself as a person. You have to toss that ego crap out the window, and you have to recognize, if you're lucky to be playing music at all, you're lucky. And then it's to what degree? Is it okay? Is it on the weekends with the band, at the club, at the bar, at the pub, whatever it is? Cool, that's awesome. Even if it's just like, hey, I've just started out, a few months ago, and I want to start playing. I've got some buddies in the garage. We're going to start doing some songs. That's awesome. But you're still putting everything in perspective. Even if you're looking at that going, I really want to dive into this, I want to be a musician, you still have to go, okay, yeah, but I also like to eat. So I'm going to keep the job and do it on the weekends until I can, it can start taking over the income. And how many people are really, really doing that?
Right.
So,
Right. Well, that's awesome, and I think that's a good place to sort of put a bow on our chat here. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. Is there a place where our listeners can go check out more about you or about the projects that you're involved in?
yeah, well, I have a website, jimmykeegan.com. That's Keegan. Bands, Pattern Seeking Animals, if you're a Spocks Beard fan, all the usual places, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and whatnot. I don't know how Instagram we all are, but we should be more. Yeah, and if there's, if you want to book me for a session or a tour or something like that, you can find me there. If you just want to listen to those bands, all that music is available at the regular places. I'm still working on a solo album. Like I'm forever working on a solo. I'm just glad that Nick DiVirgilio put out a solo album here, and they're like, it was 10 years ago from his last solo record. I'm going, oh. Okay, I'm still good. I'm only at like 9, so.
Not a Chinese democracy yet. You're good.
Not yet.
Yeah, or at least I'm doing better than Peter Gabriel. So.
Yeah, right.
And,
a lot of
that's saying something.
A lot of reissues.
Yeah, right.
All right, well, that's awesome. We're going to play out today with Soon But Not Today. We're going to hear a sample of that. Thank you, Jimmy, so much, and we really, really appreciate it. Can't wait to see you on the road, and hopefully we'll be playing some of these festivals with you as time gets back to somewhat normal.
Yeah.
See?
Or not normal, and something totally different and better.
Something totally different. Yeah, that'd be great. So, all right, guys.
Thanks, guys.
So much. Really appreciate everybody hanging out in the chat. Really appreciate it. And we're going to listen to Soon But Not Today. Woo. See you later, everybody.